Waiting for YouTube to say we're live. It's Tuesday, October 12th, 2021. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we are talking about the number of players in games. Fuck, do I have an opening bit of any? I do have an opening bit.
Hockey starts.
Yeah.
Real hockey.
Seabad got his big contract.
Yep.
Guess I got a minor opening bit, I guess. About City Bike. I'll just start with that. So I did go into the office today, and it's still nice out, and also COVID time. So when that happens, I always bike, and I use the city bike because it's easier than going down to the bike room and getting my bike through the security area and taking it up, and then getting into the office and going through the bike parking area. City bike for such a short ride kind of just works. But this morning I go down, and of course all the bikes are gone in the main dock, even though I left early. So no trouble. So I walk around the corner to another dock, and there's only 2 bikes on this dock. So, and I look, and all the city bikes are gone for some reason in the area. So fine. I go to get one bike, and it just fails. And now I'm kind of in a hurry. So, oh crap. So I go get the other bike, and it works fine. And I start biking, and I make it exactly halfway over the bridge. And then I realize in my haste, I left my city bike key in the fucking city bike dock that also has my house key and my Uber key on it.
Oh no.
So I immediately turn around and I bike as fast as I can on a city bike, which thankfully was
there.
It was mostly downhill. Yep, it was just there in the dock. And I think if nothing else, what saved me was one, New Yorkers.
The dock was empty, so no one was going to go to.
That's it.
Dock.
There's 2 things going on here. One, wall things. If you lose something on the street, it's often just gone in New York. You just got to live with that. But generally, the etiquette in New York is if you see something on the street that someone probably lost, the best bet is to leave it there because whoever lost it will probably come back trying to find it and cross its path. Unless you're in a venue where there's a lost and found or security or something.
Yeah, subway. You can take it to the booth on the subway.
Yep. I have taken things to the booth before. I retrieved something from the booth before. But if you find something on the street, I've seen people's keys just on the street. And usually I just leave them there because I figure whoever it is going to fucking come back like I did, imagining in their head the pain in the ass of losing your keys. And it was there, and it was fine, and I biked back to work, and that's the most exciting thing that happened to me today.
All right.
That's all I got.
Exciting going
My biking bit. Got any gaming news?
Gaming news. I mean, the Metroid game came out.
You got the Diana Jones Award.
Yeah, right. So the Diana Jones Award, if you don't know about it, I think we've talked about it on the show at least once or twice before.
We had to.
This award. Yeah, it's from 20 years ago, I think. It's been around. And it's basically this award where they constructed it out of a piece of wood, a burnt copy of an Indiana Jones RPG, literally burnt, set on fire, and then encased the remains of the burnt RPG in some sort of acrylic pyramid thing and stuck it on there. So it looks like some sort of ancient artifact that Indiana Jones would maybe get somewhere. And they have a committee. It's a somewhat secret committee that just announces nominees, and then at Gen Con it announces a winner. And it's just for excellence in gaming annually. And the award can go to anything. It can go to a game. It can go to a person. It can go to a concept. Right? There was the year that Actual Play won.
No.
Right. Board Game Geek won at one time.
And in a way, a lot of what they do is how it's gotten. We did a show a long time ago on awards shows and awards and nomination processes and everything. This is more than a decade ago. And we talked a lot about how if we made one, we would just pick a bunch of people who we trust and they just fucking decide. And we don't do any weird drama or have an academy that just doesn't watch movies.
Yep. Dominion won one time. Nordic LARP, just the concept of Nordic LARP just won once. Right?
Yep. The 2001 winner was Peter Edkison.
Yeah, the first person.
Yeah, CEO of Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah, the guy who founded Wizard WotC. Yeah, famous person. Anyway, so this year, in 2021, the winner was Casey from NIBCARD Games. If you don't know about Casey, I was first found out about Casey at the first Unplugged. I think there was some sort of, I forget exactly what the involvement was, but that's where I somehow learned of his existence. He's this dude in Nigeria, and basically is like a one-man show as far as board games are in Nigeria, right? You can't imagine most of the board game companies in the world are, especially with the supply chain deal, are not, they're not shipping 1,000 copies of Ticket to Ride to Nigeria, right? So basically this dude, he publishes board games, right? Designs board games. He has a board game cafe store place, and he runs a convention. He basically does every board game thing that needs to be done all in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Right? Pretty much carrying, Nigerian board games on his back over there. And the Diana Jones Award recognized his excellence, which is very well deserved. I would have also chosen Casey from amongst the nominees.
It's a fantastic choice.
I follow Casey on Twitter, and he tweets a lot of good stuff. So that's good. The second news is a sadder news. The Diana Jones Award, unlike, say, like the Stanley Cup.
I was about to say, this is our favorite kind of trophy.
Right. There's just one. They don't keep making new ones. They don't have more copies of the Indiana Jones RPG to set on fire. So,
we might need to start sourcing some.
Maybe. I don't know where you get it from. But anyway, so there's just one of them. And what they would do is they would just sort of, if the person who won it was at Gen Con, they'd be like, here you go. And if the person who won it, wasn't at Gen Con, they'd like mail it to you or whatever. So you basically get to hold on to it for a year. They just, just like, here you go, have it.
Yeah, like here's the Stanley Cup. Well, though with an asterisk that it's a little more complicated with the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, so Alex Roberts was the 2019 winner. And Alex Roberts had it in Canada. And the winner in 2020 was Black Excellence in Gaming, where they gave the award to a whole bunch of people all at once. So they didn't actually, Alex Roberts just held on to the physical object. But at this year, they actually had a Gen Con. So there was an attempt to mail the Diana Jones Award. Alex Roberts went to the Canadian Post Office and mailed it to one of the, Diana Jones committee people. And it did not arrive. And there's no tracking, and they don't know where it is.
It's the way you said that, there was an attempt.
It's probably just gone.
It's like when we tried to mail that Animal Crossing poster from Australia to our friend.
Yeah, it's just gone, which is sad. But, the physical award isn't what matters here, right? It's not, they can keep awarding the Diana Jones Award without the Diana Jones Award, right?
Though, I hope that at some point, like a decade from now in Geek Nights, we cover hey, somebody found the Diana Jones trophy.
Yeah, it'll be it's somewhere on Earth. It's not incinerated.
I highly doubt it is incinerated or crushed or something.
No, but what could happen to it is if it's really lost in the mail, then eventually whatever postal service, if they don't deliver it, it might be just trashed or something.
Or sold off at auction in a lot or something.
Stolen, someone's just got it. They know what
some
nerd just got it.
Some nerd has to make a documentary just about the trophy and try to track it down and probably fail and make a YouTube video about it.
It's really hard to find something that's lost in the mail
Yep.
Anyway.
So I played the Actraiser Renaissance, the remake. I got through most of Fillmore.
Just the same as Actraiser 1, only HD?
Nope. So I, being the kind of person that I am, and apparently you're the same way, I don't read reviews of games. I play games myself and I review them. So I did not read anything about the Actraiser remake other than all the stuff around the new soundtrack.
I saw the Nintendo Direct where they announced it. That looked like it was just an HD remake of the original with also the option to go non-HD.
Yep. So I did also the big news I was focusing on was that because Actraiser on the Super Nintendo had one of the bitchinest scores to grace the Super Nintendo as a platform. It was such a good soundtrack. And the remake, as we talked about, has a recomposition, an HD version of that score.
Yeah, well, didn't we already talk about Yuzo Koshiro's comments regarding what he did on this?
We talked about that, so I figured I was going to play it, and what I expected was I'll play janky old Actraiser, but I'm just going to vibe to the soundtrack. This is actually, they added stuff. This is way different than the original Actraiser, and honestly, it's just better in every possible way. So,
how much money is it?
It's $30 right now. I would say it might be worth $30 if and only if you have never played the original Actraiser ever. I think it would be
most people.
I think it would be worth your while then to try this game out, because despite the fact that the town part is not that great and the platforming is also not that great, there still is a dearth of games that have both the town and the side scroll.
That's true.
But so what's different? I'll talk about what's different, because having played it so far, I'm really enjoying it. One, they really, there's characters now. Like, the angel is a character with a lot of dialogue. She's really cute. You are this super hot god, and they have, anime visual novel-looking art for everybody. They added a bunch of characters who are new, who interact with you in the angel, and they're also heroes that will move into your towns and can be leveled up. There's also tower defense of the towns.
That sounds fun.
The towns will get attacked, and you got to deal with that shit. And you can use your god powers just like you do in the normal game, like drop lightning on them and stuff. You can direct your town folks, like the heroes, where to go fight. Doing the tower defense game, you're building palisades and forts and things, and how much do you fortify your town? If you got a lot of forts, that reduces how much the town produces. And beyond that, it just has a ton of quality of life improvements that make the town bit a little more complex, a little meatier. There's a little more to chew on when you're playing it. It's not just trivial, because I thought, oh, whatever, they added a tower defense, this game, and then I died. I was like, wait, what? What? Game over? What? I actually had to try a little bit in the early tower defense part. So they added all these extra systems to make the town part not just a nothing game, because as much as I love the original Actraiser for being unique, the town part of the original Actraiser is kind of a nothing game. It feels good when you first start playing, but there's so little there. There are so few mechanics that it just pads out playtime before you go back in and do the side scroller. Mm-hmm. In terms of the side scroller, it's pretty much the exact same game, right down to the janky controls. But they added a few more combo-y attacks you can do that make it more fun and more like a modern side scroller. And they added a backdash like Symphony of the Night style, which actually makes it playable, unlike the original side scroller, which honestly, good for its time, not good by 21st century standards. So, I don't know. I'm enjoying it. I'm going to give it a full review after I beat it, because I don't know if it actually gets a lot harder or if more things come in. But so far, there have been enough changes to where it is a materially different game. So, speaking of which, how's that Metroid Dread? I have not even started it yet.
I mean, the Metroid Dread is a 2D Metroid game, much like Super Metroid. It's really good, right? In terms of anything you want from a Metroid game, right? It's got a lot. The new stuff is exciting. The only thing is, I think, other people who aren't me, could, and I could totally agree, could say that it's like the best Metroid. It's even, it's at the Super Metroid level. And I could see why they would say that. It's just that me personally, and this started a huge discussion today with our friends, right? Is I'm not personally a fan of, action video games that are Simon Says-y, right? So, you look at a lot of popular games these days, like in the action genre, say the Bayonetta types or the Souls types, right? Where you're doing these Simon Says fights. We're oh, the bad guy does this animation. That means at this timing, you push these buttons to roll out of the way, and then you attack. Or
that's kind of how even Actraiser is like that.
Yeah, or you look at, say, Breath of the Wild. It's when you're fighting a Lionel. It's well, when the Lionel does this attack, you gotta, you want to press A at the right time to counter, right? It's a very Simon Says kind of play, and I feel like I've done a lot of that. I enjoyed some of it in the past, but these days and for the past several years, I really do not enjoy that, right? It's like when if a game is entirely that, like just a straight up action game, I just don't play them, even if I might recognize that they're well made. And
but what about how most of them, it's Simon Says, but there's multiple patterns you can do that all have this, that will all successfully deal with.
There are a lot of subtle differences between all of the games, yes. And some of them do it better than others. And you could probably spend days and days and days just talking about that specific that narrow topic. There's so much material there.
I mean, I'm still working on that panel of just looking at resource loops and threat levels of characters in team-based first-person shooters.
Yeah, but Simon Says in video games is huge. It's so huge. It's actually difficult to like imagine, like when you think about games without Simon Says, like, oh, the boss doesn't signal what attack he's gonna do. It sounds like a bad game, right?
Honestly, they usually are. Usually, boss fights in games like that are not fun.
Right. Yes, yeah, exactly. But it's just like you can't think of anything else in between bad game and just like if I want to play Simon Says, I could play like DDR.
See, I think you're oversimplifying though. It isn't just Simon Says. There's a lot of different ways to react to things. That's just skill. Fencing is just Simon Says by that logic. Literal real world fencing is just Simon Says by that logic. You react based on
real world person doesn't just have like 5 patterns and
they kind of do.
They only have 5 moves. They don't have any more, and they do them exactly the same way each time.
So what? You just want a harder boss that I feel like you would get even more frustrated with if it just acted like a real thing?
It's not about the frustration, right? It's like I beat all these bosses, no problem. I just don't enjoy the Simon Says pattern boss combat.
But what pattern do you want then? A fight?
I don't want a pattern. I want it to be like I'm playing against a person where there is no pattern. Like if you're playing a fighting game and the other person is just a person, who knows what the hell they're gonna do?
But the almost the entire skill of fighting games is reacting to slight movements and frame timing of the other player to then deal with their combos.
That aspect of fighting games I don't like, but the aspect of the other person is a person and isn't just, you know, a loop that says randomly pick from this list of 3 things. All right, now pick from the same list of 3 things again. Once you've taken enough damage, the list of things you can do expands. Now pick from this list of things randomly in a loop.
The only difference between what you're describing and a real world fight or a more is just how many things are on that random list, and there aren't that many, even in real world situations.
Regardless, right? Metroid Dread.
I don't think you don't like playing real-time games anymore.
I mean,
with bosses of any kind.
We can discuss that later, but the point is, compared to other Metroid games, Metroid Dread, right, really goes hard for the action, you know, Simon Says parts.
Ooh, that makes me excited, actually.
All right, it's like not only are the bosses very action game, right? If you like those kind of games, which most people do, I'm the weird one, you'll love the bosses in Metroid Dread because within that, you know, framework, they are excellent, right? And not only that, but also, you know, in most Metroid games, the regular old enemies that are just around are like just sort of decoration. They usually don't do much. Right? You just sort of blow them away or clean them up.
Actraiser's like that. Actraiser is basically just get to the boss. Now there's a really hard boss fight.
Right. In Metroid Dread, even if you know, I guess if you get really powered up, then the bad guys in sort of the early areas become really weak. But in some of the areas, the bad guys are like actually, I guess until you get the screw attack. The screw attack really lets you mess everyone up big time. But before you get the screw attack, which is very late, the bad guys are like, yeah, you have to do like a timed hit on the bad guys to counter them to get more energy out of them, or there'll be some challenging regular bad guys who are just walking around trying to get somewhere and this guy gets in your way. It's just a normal guy.
You know, I like that because a similar thing happened in, of all games, Final Fantasy IV, where the regular, like in the American game, they kind of nerfed the regular, like they nerfed the bosses and the regular stuff, but in the original game, all the regular fights along the way were kind of moderately challenging puzzles or moderately difficult. Separate, very different from a lot of earlier Final Fantasy games. Like you couldn't just ignore those like regular fights along the way.
Yeah, but yeah, if you're not me, who doesn't like, you know,
games,
action video game, right? Yeah, then you might. I would not disagree, or I could completely agree with someone saying that, like, yeah, this is like the best Metroid game there is.
You know what I got to do?
Even me, right? I would probably put it second after Super Metroid, and
I was about to say, I got to go back because I have never actually played the Metroid Prime games.
Oh, well, those are like in a different category.
Yeah, I know, but I have not played them, and that's one of my deep, that's in the backlog near the top.
Should have played them in college when I did.
Yeah, but I was busy, so I watched you play them, and I was mostly playing Counter-Strike.
Didn't they put them out for the Switch? I think you get them on Switch, right?
Yeah, but I just did. Since I got a Switch, I've been busy. I haven't even started Metroid Dread yet.
Yeah,
I bought it.
Final boss.
In fact, I bought it and Actraiser at the same time, and then Actraiser finished downloading first. That's why I started playing Actraiser.
Mm-hmm.
So, in one last gaming adjacent news, so we already said that we're not going to go to PAX South, not irrespective of COVID, but also for political reasons. Like, Texas has done so many egregious things that, like, we can't even enumerate them all.
Going to Texas before, but now it's like way over the line.
Yeah,
right? It's not a Bugs Bunny situation where it's like, cross this line, I dare you. All right, I'm a crossing. It's like they cross the line, the end.
Yep. So
drawing another line. That's it.
While the state of Texas has crossed several egregious, dangerous.
So far, they can't even see the line, and if they turn around and look backwards.
Like, I will not visit Texas under any circumstances. Like, full stop. If my job told me I had to go there, I would threaten to quit. Like, that is how bad this is.
The fact the Earth is round puts Texas in danger of crossing the line twice. Just how far they've gone forward.
Somehow, Texas, like yesterday, crossed a line that might actually prevent PAX South from even being able to happen. So the governor of Texas announced that the state has now banned vaccine mandates for any entity that does business in Texas, for both their customers or their employees. So the convention center, the Gonzales whatever convention center, cannot require vaccination. An event in the convention center, like the Penny Arcade Expo, cannot require vaccination.
I guess you could still require it if you're a private non-business, because if you're not a business...
Nope, they're covering all private entities.
Well, you could, your house, right? A private place that is not a business.
But a convention center is not that.
No, the convention center is not that. That is correct.
And considering that, PAX West happened, we weren't there, but they required a vaccine or a recent COVID test. We know that Unplugged coming up, which we won't be at either, has gone further and is requiring absolutely vaccinations or you can't come. So
wait, hold on. I just want to, this is going to be silly, but I can't not say it, right? What if there is an industrial facility in Texas where masks are needed for, because there's poison gas or something like that?
So they're
not allowed.
No, this only blocks vaccination mandates.
Oh, okay.
Now, there are other state rules that say that nobody has to comply with mask mandates, too. That's a whole other line.
If I have a mask mandate for a non-COVID reason, can I enforce it in Texas? Or can people come in and breathe poison gas and die?
I believe the latter based on my reading of all this news. Like, for real. It is ridiculous. But this one...
We should open up a poison gas factory in Texas and hire shitty people.
But considering that PAX Unplugged requires vaccination to attend, which, while we're not going to be there as Geek Nights, like as attendees playing games or anything like that, it's still like I applaud that compared to lesser measures, if they're going to happen at all. I can't imagine they would rescind their vaccine requirement just to continue to do a PAX in Texas.
I don't know. We'll see what happens.
So I hope against hope there is never again a PAX South in Texas unless Texas becomes a safe state to visit. And at this point, we need to start helping people move out. Like, if anyone wants to move out, we almost need a refugee program to pay people
to move in to vote.
Yeah, but you can't say that someone has to move to such a dangerous place to be able to fix that place.
You got to privilege people who can vote properly.
Yeah, do you want to move to Texas?
If enough people who were as privileged as I am, who were going to vote, and we went together, I would go, and if it was going to work.
Yeah, I don't think we could get enough people to commit to that.
Well, I'm not going to just go do it on my own and then say, hey, guys, follow me, because no one's going to follow me.
In fact, there's other stuff going on right now where like banks can't hire employees there, and a bunch of big banks can't even, like, they have said they won't underwrite bonds for the state of Texas anymore because Texas also passed a bunch of laws saying it is illegal to not service the gun industry, and a bunch of banks don't want to underwrite like gun shit.
Okay.
So now the banks are like,
because I want to be a customer of those banks.
Goldman Sachs just said, well, we're not going to underwrite any bonds in Texas because according
I can't get a checking account at Goldman Sachs, can I?
I mean,
you can get a credit card from Goldman Sachs, the Apple credit card.
But yeah,
you can get a checking account there.
I cannot envision a world where the Penny Arcade Expo goes back on their vaccine mandate for Texas. So I predict there will be no PAX South in January. Or if there is a PAX South, it will not be in Texas.
We'll see. If PAX crosses the line, PAX is not immune from crossing the line either.
Oh, if PAX went forward with
went to Otakon how many years in a row and then stopped going, right? Well,
yep.
If PAX says, we're going to be shitty because we care about money more than people's lives, then we'll stop going there too.
Yeah, nothing's really sacred on that front. Granted, Otakon probably crossed the line several years before we stopped going. We just didn't know better.
Well, with what?
With just being kind of bad, like having to wait in those lines to get in.
No, but they didn't cross a line in terms of...
They didn't cross any moral or ethical lines, no.
No. Come on.
But we didn't stop going to Otakon for moral or ethical reasons either. All right. Things of the day. But anyway, things of the day. So check this out. You ever been on a boat or a ship, and there's these big white canisters hanging kind of off the side with a bunch of ropes tied to them?
I've seen those on boats, but I've never been on a boat big enough to have them.
Oh, actually, the Sea Streak ferry to Sandy Hook has them. Small versions.
If it has it, I didn't see them on there.
Yep, they're on the side, because whenever I'm on a boat like that, I like looking at them because they're neat and they're complicated, and what they are life preservation vessels. They're basically lifeboats. But you might wonder how those things get deployed. My thing of the day is a sped up video, 36 seconds long, that shows what one of those canisters does if you activate it. And all I'm going to say is it is so much more impressive and complicated than you are possibly imagining. They basically just throw that thing down into the water, and magically there is a lifeboat with a cover and a slide and everything just there. Like magically out of nowhere, like a transformer.
Well, it's better than what Titanic had.
Nothing? Are you sure he had lifeboats? Are you sure it wasn't nothing?
They had some lifeboats.
They did have a few lifeboats. Half of them were on the wrong side of the boat and couldn't be used. Anyway.
Yeah.
So what do you got?
They were the kind, I'm pretty sure, with pulleys that you had to like lower down, right?
Yep. They were just literal small boats that had to be lowered down
there
carefully.
There are still boats that I've seen that still have that kind.
Yeah, but this is like what a modern lifeboat actually looks like on a real ship.
All right. Cool.
So what do you got?
Hope you never have to use one of these.
Yep, unless you're using,
non-trained.
I was about to say, context. Unless you're being trained or doing it for funsies.
Yeah. Oh, thing of the day.
Yeah.
Right. So, my biological sister, I don't know, some people might be finding this out, is semi-famous? I don't know what counts as famous these days, right?
There was a brief period when GeekNights was more famous than her because she didn't do anything yet because she was younger than us, and then she became famous.
Yeah. Some level of fame, definitely higher than our level of fame by a significant amount, but she worked at BuzzFeed making videos, being in videos and whatnot. She doesn't work there anymore. She's doing her own thing, I guess. I don't know what's going on out there in California. That place is crazy. But she started a Patreon as of like yesterday, maybe. So yeah, you can go and check out her arts if you enjoy them and give her money.
Yep.
That she never comes asking me for money. I don't think she has money problems. You know, she can still afford to live in California. I think she's doing okay. But you know, when you're on your own, sometimes, you know, things don't work out. Who knows what's going to be years down the line.
Yeah, her art's cool too. Like if I had to describe it without describing it, it is adjacent to topics discussed in Neon Genesis Evangelion. That,
I like the illustration she does that remind me of like Eternity from Marvel Comics.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it'll be something all colorful, some like colorful cartoon land, but then there's like a spaceman, like a shape of a not of a human-ish shape, but it's just outer space inside of that shape.
Stylized and psychedelic. Interesting art.
Yeah, so she does a lot of stuff over there. So you're better if you're giving GeekNights money. Jesus Christ!
Yeah.
Go give Sarah Rubin $5 a month.
Well, I mean, the GeekNights Patreon is giving $5 of its dollars to Sarah. So.
Oh, you can do that?
Yeah, but so the way Patreon works, my Patreon is also GeekNights.
So, but if you sign up for someone else's Patreon, it will take money that someone else gave to GeekNights and give it to the someone else.
It will. It'll take from that.
It won't charge your credit card every month, like because I don't have a Patreon like that. I'm taking money in. I'm only giving money out, so it's charging my credit card every month. Like, here's your statement. You don't. Yours takes that money from the listener.
Yep. So the listener. So you could go direct to the source here if you like this art.
So I think if that's the case, if Rim patronizing another Patreon simply redistributes the listener's wealth, you should sign up for so many Patreons that eventually it evens out to nothing because you don't need the money, right?
I actually should up my Patreon game. The problem is all the Patreons I subscribe to, I never even go to any of their content anymore. I'm too busy.
Oh, see, every morning on my iPad, I open up Patreon app and I scroll through and I see, because there's not too many that are posting content that regularly.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, guaranteed video has paused multiple times because they could not provide the guarantee that month.
Yeah, most of the people are not posting stuff that frequently, so it's really just a few like comicsy things that are really, posting a lot of stuff in there. And a lot of people also might be posting frequently. But I'm sticking to like the $1 tier, and you have to go to like $5 to get actual lots of content.
Sometimes some people I'm a patron of primarily because I want to support their activism specifically, or like the thing that they're doing, even if I'm not a fan of that thing personally.
Well, I mean, I think I am a fan of the thing or the person or the thing the person makes or both.
Yep.
But I don't. Even if I was getting that feed of all that stuff, it's like, I don't like the stuff that much that I need it to consume it daily, right? Or weekly even.
Well, there are marginalized streamers I support, but it's not that I don't watch marginalized streamers. It's that I don't watch any streamers. Like, I don't watch streamers at all, ever, except AGDQ.
For example, my recent thing of the day, the Cracking the Cryptic, the Sudoku people, right? If you sign up for their Patreon, you get like extra puzzles and extra videos. And it's like, whoa, dudes, you put up like 2 YouTube videos a day plus more. That's already way more Sudoku than I ever need. Unless that was my primary geekery, I would not need all that stuff. It's like, if I'm going to Patreon you, I'm going to do it at the lowest level, right? Because I'm not actually going to consume that much content. I would have to sacrifice something else I care about much more because I don't have that time,
Yep. So, anyway, in the meta moment, the GeekNights Book Club book, which I slowed down. I haven't read any since the last GeekNights because of busyness.
Well, I got held up by Metroids.
Yep, so we both got waylaid a little bit.
Dispose of the Metroids today or tomorrow, I believe, so.
Yep, and the weather's getting chillier. It's the time of the year when I can go sit in the park. It's a little too cold to, do a bike ride, but I'll just sit there and read. It's, anyway, Genji continues to, do his thing, but I haven't read it in a week.
Continues to say the same thing every time.
Yeah, because, can you spoil the tale of Genji?
I think that the statute of limitations is over.
I think so.
The first novel ever written by human beings ever.
Also, I dare anyone listening to this podcast, even if I said a specific spoiler about a specific character, to remember which character that was when you encountered them in the book. Unless it's Genji.
Sure.
Or maybe Genji's best friend, that guy.
All right. Also, meta moment. So there was a GeekNights newsletter that at times has been sent frequently and at times has been sent infrequently. But
it's fantastic. Scott doesn't like people to praise it, but or praise him or anything we do, but he writes it all. I don't have anything to do with it. It's always been fantastic.
It's free. Unlike Rim, who's charging you for extra work, right? So the Geek Nights newsletter was run using a free web service called Tiny Letter, which is basically MailChimp's like free mode. They have it off to the side. They don't think they updated it or anything. It's just been there for years.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they haven't shut it down. So it still exists over there, but I kind of felt uncomfortable with that platform. Like, are they just going to delete this? Like, what's, right? So I went through all the trouble of making a new email template, and I set up a whole new email sending system, all the computer parts and everything, and it seems to work. I just tested it. The only issue I think that might exist is that if you use a weird email reader, the emails might look weird. So I copied over all the subscribers, the few hundred of them, right, from the old system to the new system. So if you're already subscribed, don't worry. You're just going to get an email whenever I send one. I got to write one first. And if you're not already subscribed, well, we have a new URL, which I haven't typed anywhere yet. But so you're set to listen. It's newsletters.frontrowcrew.com. Or is it newsletter.frontrowcrew.com? Hold on.
Uh-oh. Careful. One of those might go somewhere bad somehow.
It's newsletter.frontrowcrew.com/subscription/form. And
all I can think is devarag.org/blog.
Yeah, okay. If you put a trailing slash after the form, it's not going to work. So,
get on that.
Because I'm using some open source software. That's just how it works.
Yeah.
It's not my fault. But so yeah, if you go there, you can subscribe to the Geek Nights newsletter, and you'll receive it whenever I eventually send it. And also, I'm going to find some way to collect the old ones, back up the new ones, and I'm going to create some sort of, more easily browsable archive. Because otherwise, the only way to browse the archive will be to find the email that you saved, or click the view on web link at the bottom of the email or something like that. And I guess the privacy conscious people out there would probably like to know that since I'm hosting this ourselves, there isn't going to be any privacy tracking nonsense. And also in the new version of frontrowcrew.com, which is partially underway, I'm basically decided I'm just going to remove all the Google Analytics and all that, just removing all that shit, right?
Yep.
We don't need it. We don't look at it.
No.
Why should I bother you with that?
I barely even look at the analytics I get from our YouTube channel.
Yeah, so I'm just going to remove all that nonsense. We're just going to serve up, a normal quality web page when we get around to it. Just be
you know what?
CSS.
It's like the old days. Here's a website, and there's content on this website.
Yep, we're going to make us a motherfucking website. So look forward to that. And if you know anyone who is really good at web design and HTML, CSS parts that could make a motherfucking website that doesn't have a lot of bullshit JavaScript on it, mostly just really good at CSS is what we need. And let me know, because it took me a long ass time just to make one email template. If I have to make the whole website, it's going to be tough.
Yep. And before you ask, yes, we'll pay. We pay real money when someone works for us.
Yeah, that Patreon money before it goes to...
Yeah, what it actually goes to is like the new Geek Nights logos. We hired a designer. We paid them market rates. That's how we roll. We're not gonna... If you actually are skilled and you talk to Scott and it works out and you make our website for us, you'll be making money comparable to the going contract rates for that kind of development.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we're riffing here. This is a topic that we might do a panel on in the future,
right?
But
so
TBD.
Here's the thing, right? So this is something that we've talked about in the past somewhat frequently, but always tangentially combined with other topics, not as the topic itself, right?
Yep.
So it sort of feels like something we've done, but we haven't. Secondly, it's something I see people not understand on the internet with great frequency.
Wait, people don't understand something on the internet?
Right.
And they get mad about it?
Board Game Reddit, number one.
Board Game Reddit, where the most common post is, why is this game broken? And the first response is, because you're not playing it right. Here's the rule that you got wrong.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, those are just the ones I share with Rim. The most, but anyway.
Yeah. No, I saw a discourse the other day on whether or not there is skill in poker. This was months ago, and it was just what?
Yes.
What? But
there's a lot of luck, but
yeah,
yes.
But that's the kind of conversation that is usually the discourse almost hurts understanding if you try to interact with people online about it.
Yeah. Anyway, and 3, right? The great game developer publisher Amabel Holland from Hollandspiel, right? Who make a lot of great games. You should check them out if you haven't already. They tweeted recently, and the tweet was something like there are one-player game. I forget the exact words of the tweet, and I haven't been able to find the tweet again because searching Twitter sucks. There's no easy way to like search tweets that I have liked or anything like that. But anyway, the tweet was something along the lines of there are one-player games, two-player games, and there are 3+ player games, right? There's the 3 different kinds of games. And they were like, wow, you see, people publish games that are like, yeah, for 1 to 6 players. And it's like, wow, you made 3 different games.
Yeah.
It's like, what's going on there?
And we've talked about this, like you said, a lot, especially in those panels on like how to win at games or heuristics or any of that stuff. Like this is always like under like the baseline of a lot of what we talk about. So maybe this can be its own topic.
All right. So for the people who don't understand, let's break it down. So first of all, you got to divide games into winnable games, the ortho games, as we have borrowed the term.
Yep, an ortho game, let's see if I remember the definition. It's the game where there is a set of players, an agreed upon set of rules, and a method by which to rank the players at the conclusion of the game.
Yep. So it's a game of winning and losing.
Yep.
Right?
You can win, you can lose.
Any other kind of game that's not about winning and losing, right? So is in another category entirely and is not that pertinent to this conversation. So that
we'll touch on it in the end though. Dungeons and Dragons.
Anything else you want to apply the word game to that's not a competition of winning and losing. We're not talking about those. We're only talking about the winning and losing game. So number 2. Okay, so you've got a winning and losing game, right? And there are, I guess Rim wants to talk about the special case where there are 0 players. I don't think that's worth mentioning.
So, the Wikipedia page, which has had a lot of recent updates, and I did not make these updates, actually has a lot of academic citations about the 3 classes of 0-player ortho games.
Okay.
What's interesting is this gets into other things we've talked about. The 3 categories that are widely considered to be 0-player games are 1, games of pure chance, which that gets...
Yeah, I guess you could consider Candyland to be a 0-player game.
Bunko, Snakes and Ladders, Bingo, Roulette.
You just find out who wins. That's true. Okay.
Yep. But arguably, if we're talking about games that are ortho games as play, then me and Scott playing one of those games, we're still playing a game with ranking and winners and losers. It's just we can't impact the outcome. So it's arguable whether or not we're a player with agency. Number 2 is interesting because this covers a lot of other games. I don't know how to engage with this, but there's a lot of academic citations. Games that are determined by their initial state. A game that evolves as determined by its initial state, requiring no further input from humans, is considered a 0-player game. Conway's Game of Life, Progress Quest, etc.
Yeah.
I
talk about those,
don't
really.
think... While I agree pure chance is an interesting situation, determined by initial state is a lot muddier, and I don't think it's worth engaging with.
That's not a winning-losing ortho game. You don't win and lose at Conway's Game of Life.
Yep. But players can be ranked. There are...
How can you be ranked at Conway's Game of Life?
There are. I've seen meta rules for Conway's Game of Life to like have multiple colors or multiple boards and see which one evolves and whatever. Anyway, it's not germane. The 3rd category is the one we were just talking about before the show. AI versus AI games where all human players have been replaced by AIs, arguably have 0 players, and the game is more of just an experience watching it play out.
Right, so if you have AlphaGo play against AlphaGo at Go, and you just see which one of the 2 computers wins, right? It's like you could consider the computers to be players, whatever. But yeah, I don't think whatever.
And we're not talking about games that are not ortho games. So arguably, it doesn't matter if that's a 0-player game because I, as a player playing the game, cannot win or lose because if I play the game, it's no longer a 0-player game. So it's moot. And I think we've covered 0-player games sufficiently.
All that is basically that's equivalent like running a simulation, right? So imagine if I ran a weather simulation, right? It's just going to simulate the weather in a local area, maybe try to predict it. And I arbitrarily decide beforehand, thunderstorm is winning and bright and sunny means losing.
Yep.
It's like that So what? You've made an arbitrary distinction just so that you can classify it as a game instead of a simulation.
I think zero player matters a lot more for non-ortho games, which are that's such a wide topic that we're only going to touch on the idea of a non-ortho game briefly.
Okay, so ortho game with one player, right? We're talking a solo game. People need to understand this. All solo ortho games are actually just puzzles, right? It's sitting there with a Sudoku and trying to find the answer to the Sudoku is the only difference between that and, say, playing Pandemic by yourself is that Pandemic has hidden information in it, right? So it's not just like a arguably solved puzzle.
Arguably, no single player game can be by definition an ortho game because you must be able to rank the players. You can't
You're
ranking
yourself as either win or lose. The game, the opponent doesn't get a rank. You rank yourself either yes or no. It's a pass.
But ortho games don't say against. They literally say rank the players. So player one always has the same rank.
Whether it's an ortho game or not, all solo games are puzzles. Doing the crossword puzzle is effectively the same as playing
one player route
games solo mode.
Playing like the one player variant that's increasingly popular. Though I think our point would stand that a board game that says 1+ players, the one player version is just a different game that uses the same components.
Yeah, it's like you can play what's a good example of something here?
I mean, all the interesting one-player game examples I have are not really ortho games. Like Hades, it's an experience. It's an interactive entertainment for one. I wouldn't even consider Hades to be an ortho game because you're not ranking players against each other.
Right. Well, consider this.
And winningness is a variable scale. Did you beat the game? Did you beat all the side quests? Did you unlock everything? Did you 100% it? It's almost not even a relevant conversation.
Right. Well, you have chess, which is a 2-player game normally. Right?
Yep.
But 1-player chess would be chess puzzles, literally. Right?
Yep.
You're using the same pieces as chess and the same rules as chess, and being good at 1-player chess puzzles might help you get better at 2-player chess.
That's a good point.
But playing 1-player chess, just here's a board, find the checkmate or whatever, right? In one move, that puzzle.
Yep.
Is that activity in and of itself is an entirely different game from 2-player chess, although it shares many, similar rules within it. It's a puzzle is not the same thing as playing against another person. They're two different categories, right? So that's just how it is. So when people are out there saying like, "Oh, I want a solo mode for this game," right? Say you're playing Ticket to Ride.
Yeah, what you're saying is, I want a different game that uses these same components.
A different game. Exactly, and it's fundamentally not the same thing.
Yep.
Right?
Like
a different activity.
Even more interesting, some tabletop games add like mechanical AIs that will serve the role of a player and follow rules. But even then, those things act in a way that is not the same as a real player in most cases. And if it is the same as a real player, it's just a very simplistic human opponent. It's really a 2-player game, and one of them is an AI.
Right. Well, that goes back to what I was saying about 1-player Pandemic, right? The difference being is like, there's two kinds of 1-player puzzles. There's ones with perfect information and ones without perfect. I mean, there's more categories than that.
Yeah.
But this the biggest difference is the puzzles that are perfect information, like a Sudoku, and the puzzles with the hidden information, like Pandemic by yourself, because there's a deck of cards that's face down. You don't know what order they're in, or you might not even know the contents of that deck, right? So that would be even more hidden information.
So,
and the way you approach those puzzles is completely different, if but procedurally. So if you like one kind of puzzle, you might not like the other kind, but they are still both puzzles. It's a puzzle solving exercise, not a ortho gaming exercise either way.
2-player is honestly the most interesting space to me because 2-player games or 2-team games or races, we'll get into that as we've talked about that before. When we say
players, we mean sides, right? So even if there are like, if you and all of your friends gather around a table and on the table is Klondike Solitaire and you're all trying to play Klondike together, right? Like, you're trying to help spot the right move. That's still a 1-player game. That's still a puzzle.
That's why Codenames can take N players. Like how many people can you fit around that table because there's 2 teams.
Yeah. Or, you can ask for help. Your whole family can sit around a crossword puzzle and try to solve it together, or a word search, right? Or just playing Pandemic by the rules. Is that a co-op game? No, that's a one-player game, Pandemic, right? And many co-op games are one-player games in disguise, right? They say they're co-op, but actually they're just puzzles, hidden information. Some of them have a trader mechanic thing, which makes them slightly different. But
I almost said bad in most cases, but we've talked about that before.
Usually bad, right? And that's why you get the phenomenon known as quarterbacking, because you're playing a puzzle. And obviously, if you're solving a puzzle, whoever is the best at solving a puzzle, right? The person who knows the most trivia is going to do the most work on the crossword puzzle. And the other, if a child is there who doesn't know a lot of stuff, they're not going to be able to help that much. So if you're playing Pandemic, which is effectively the same exact activity as 5 people working on a crossword puzzle together, then it doesn't matter. It's not the rules' fault. It's not the player's fault. Stop blaming the other people for the fact that the game has a quarterbacking problem. It's the game's fault is that it's a one-player puzzle trying to pass itself off as a co-op activity. Co-op, the quarterbacking thing is only natural, just like it would be natural with a crossword puzzle because it's the same activity, right? But if you play Hanabi, right, which we've talked about a lot, that's not a single player puzzle, right? That's actually a multiplayer game.
Yep. So also Hanabi doesn't really work with 2 players.
No, not at all.
Yep. So 2-player games are so unique and interesting that we did an entire podcast about 2-player games in 2019 specifically, which I'll link to.
2-player game is the purest form of game, right? It's not a puzzle. You're actually competing against another human being or human beings, right? If it's teams or something. But unlike the 3+ player games that we're going to talk about next, there's no politics and there's no vote who wins.
Yep, right? I can't like sabotage Scott to let Joey Jojo win. There's only Scott. I'm always trying to sabotage Scott. He's the only person to compete with.
Right, 2 sides, and each side says, I'm trying to make me win, and the other side says, well, I'm trying to make me win, and you just test your skills at whatever the game is, whatever skill the game is testing, whether that's fighting in a boxing ring, or running fast, or being good at math, or being good at memory, or being good with your fingers in a fighting game, or being good with your fingers in an RTS. But
there is no possibility of king. There's no possibility of king making. There's no possibility of a poor player making a weird move that like messes you up. You're playing against one entity.
Yeah, there could be luck involved, but other than luck that could be in there, it's which of the 2 sides is best, right? You're measuring. It's a true measurement, as true as you're going to have, of who of the 2 sides in the game was better and or luckier at that thing at this moment. You get an answer unless there was cheating or something.
These are some of the only games that can have what I would consider formal matchmaking that is guaranteed over time with a sufficient quantity of players to accurately rank the real skill of those players. These are also games that can devolve into nothing games, broken or solved games very easily, or devolve to the point to where the skill that's being tested in the end between 2 advanced players is radically different from what is being tested among novice players.
Yep. But yeah, I think the point you made originally is that this is pretty much the only valid category for competitive games, right? If you want to have a competitive game where you actually put some sort of value on the winning and losing, you're not just declaring a winner or a loser for fun, right? Because you're playing games. You actually want to award a trophy or a prize money, right? Or, make someone's entire career based on being good at this game, or make important decisions based on the result of the game. It has to be a 2-player competitive game. It can't be any other kind. It can't be a 1-player. It can't be you solve the puzzle, right? It's what? Who cares, right? Yep. Many people solve the puzzle. But as soon as you say, oh, well, have 2 people and see who solved the puzzle faster. Oh, well, now we got something, right?
Yep.
No, it's no longer can you solve it? It's who is faster.
Now, an interesting sidebar. all games that are non-interactive, meaning
Correct.
the players cannot affect each other. They're effectively races that are independent, like a 5K run, for example. I can't shove the person in the lane next to me over.
You could.
Well, yeah, but then they stop the race and I probably go to jail. So basically, those games, it literally does not matter how many players they are. They're the same experience either way. But
as long as they're not one.
Yep.
If you run a 5K by yourself.
Yep, I could compete against myself, I guess, but that's not really
Your previous time. Yeah.
So, in fact, you know what? In the episode we did, I'm going to read the description from it on two-player games because here's what we said. Tonight on Geek Nights, we consider the unique nature of two-player games. In a non-solitaire, non-race game, 1, 2, 3, 4+ players are radically different experiences. Two-player games are in a unique and fascinating space. They devolve into chess, tic-tac-toe, or rock, paper, scissors in most tabletop games. Three-player games are political. Four-player games are basically the same, but two is a class of its own. That's the description for that episode.
And that's exactly right, because when you have a race, right, you can have any number of players in a race and have it be a valid competition where no one can affect anyone else. Everyone is doing a solo activity, right? But you're measuring how well everyone did the solo activity against each other, right? So everyone ran fast by themselves, and then we'll look and see who ran the fastest, and that's the winner, right? Everyone will do a Sudoku by themselves. Whoever solved it the fastest is the winner, right? The number of players there doesn't matter. It's a race.
So imagine a two-player race that is interactive, like a foot race where Scott and I are running.
Two-player is the only way that you can avoid having a race and have interaction with the other player.
Yep.
You actually interact with the other person. You hinder them, they hinder you. You are in each other's space doing things to each other, but you've maintained the value of the competition, the purity of the competition.
So if Scott and I are having a foot race, just the two of us, and it's interactive, if he trips me, well, he wins most likely. But in a three-player race, if Scott trips me, our slow friend Joey Jojo is going to win the race, possibly.
Yep. So yeah, the 3+ player games, any game that is 3 or more players, doesn't matter how many, could be 1 million.
Yep.
Could be 2. Oh, can't be 2. Could be 4, right?
Yep.
Any game with 3 or more players or sides, if there is any way for the players to interact with each other at all, right? Which could be, direct interaction that's obvious. Like, oh, you can just play a card that says so-and-so loses 10 points.
Yep.
But it could be very indirect. Like, oh, there's a board with, 10 meeples on it. And on your turn, you take a meeple everyone's taking from the same board. It's like you're barely interacting with each other, but you're still interacting. You might choose to take the meeple that helps someone else more than the meeple that helps you the most because it'll hurt them for you to take that meeple.
Yep.
Right? And you're sort of indirectly affecting them. If there's any shared resource, any way for the player's actions to have any effect on the other player's actions in any way, and there are 3 or more players, you are playing a political game to some extent. Some games are more political than others. Some games are nothing but political, like diplomacy.
In the end, if you play a 3+ player game of any kind, it will either devolve into a perfectly solved solution where if everyone plays equally, you can predict the winner from the beginning, or it will literally just come down to the politics of the interactions. Meaning, I hurt Scott a little bit and he hurt me a little bit, so someone else wins.
Yep. Now, there are cases where the interaction amount, like the amount you can interact, is limited by the rules, and skill does matter, such that someone who is very good can still just win, even if everyone else is trying to gang up on them intentionally, just because they're that much better than the other players. A good example might be something like PUBG, right? If someone's just really good at PUBG, they could probably win and be the chicken dinner against 99 scrubs.
Or like Counter-Strike.
All the scrubs were just hunting that one person specifically and not shooting each other.
I have played in Counter-Strike gun games back in the day where everyone knows there's this one motherfucker who is better than everyone else, and everyone tries to gang up on them, and it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, so that is possible.
But if everyone is maximally skilled, then skill no longer matters for those people. Politics is all that matters unless the game is solvable at that level.
Yep. So all 3+ player games have this political element if there's interaction, whether you like it or not. And this is where the board game Reddit people, right, come into play, right? You see people and they're like, they're playing something that's highly political, right? Like Root or Tigris and Euphrates or something like that, right? And they're coming in with their 2-player nonsense, right? And they're like,
they're mad that Root is unfair, or my friend made a bad mistake with the birds and now the cats ran away with the game and that sucks. I should have won.
It's like, that is the game. At 3+ players, that is what the game is supposed to be. That's what it's designed to be. It's a political game intentionally.
If you don't like the fact that the interactions of the players determine who wins, you don't like games with more than 2 players.
Or at least, unless they're just races.
Yep.
So they do let you, in the rule book, play 2-player Root.
It's not fun.
That is A, a bad game, in my opinion, and B, a completely different game. It is in no way resembles 3+ player Root, except in like only these surface details of like, these are the actions you can take on the board and such.
Yep.
Right. It seems like it's the same game, but if you actually, mathematically speaking, right, it's not. It's a completely different game. It's it's just like a resource gaining game as opposed to a political game. What it takes to win at that game is unrelated.
Yep.
I don't even know why they offer it, right? It's like 2 completely different games in the same box. Why is it there?
While I could say, and I think you'd agree, there is no formal difference between 3 and any number larger than 3. Like, there's no formal differences between any of those games at this point.
Yep.
But there are like soft or informal patterns that we've definitely seen with certain player counts. For example, 4 and 5 player games tend to be very similar to each other, but 3 player games very commonly have a very specific pattern where 2 of the players will get ahead, 1 of the players falls behind. The player who fell behind is effectively eliminated from the game very early, and the game becomes effectively a 2-player game, possibly with the spoiler kingmaker like just hanging out in the background.
Yeah, because there's only 3 players, you don't have a lot of political options.
Yep.
Right? And therefore, it's like, there's only enough, no matter what the game is, if you have a 3-player political game, only after the early game, only 2 people are really just going to have a chance to win, no matter how well you design that game.
Yep.
Like, can I think of any examples where...
Well, here's an example. If Scott plays a board game with like the listeners who aren't like crazy about games like we are, like a game Scott's good at. So it's Scott and 2 other listeners. If they believe that Scott is better than them at games, it is in their best interest to both attack Scott early to make sure he is effectively eliminated, to increase their chances of winning to 50%.
Mm-hmm.
It is almost impossible to avoid that situation in a 3-player game mechanically. Like, it's 3-player games that don't have this pattern of interaction and aren't races are shockingly rare. And
I think the only other pattern would be just 1 person runs away with it.
Yep.
Right.
Which I have also seen in some 3-player games.
Yes. But for 3 people to all be in like with a good chance of winning towards the end of a 3-player game is very unlikely.
Even in high skill, like a 3-player Tigris and Euphrates, even with 3 people who are extremely high skill and possibly even equal in skill to each other, 1 player is going to, either by chance or by minor politics, be set behind a little bit. And there's like this negative inverse snowball once you're off the board where you can't get back on the board.
Yeah, you might even be playing like an 18XX, which is like, probably one of the best 3-player type games.
Oh, yeah.
Board that's right. And it's like, you might be getting late in the game and everyone's like money is pretty close. Right. And it feels like, this is really close to 3 players. But really, that small difference, someone is in 3rd place.
The second to last operating round. Oh, I'm only behind by $80. The third to last, like the next operating round. Okay, now I'm behind by $3,000. Next operating round. Now I'm behind by $6,000.
It's just, it feels like you have 3 players who are in the game, which keeps the fun level up. But the reality is that 2 players ran away with the game. You just didn't tell because the numbers didn't separate that much.
I wonder if I just use some sort of logarithmic or pseudo-logarithmic function to look at our value in these games instead of the real number, if that would give me a better sense.
Yeah, probably.
Probably.
Depends on which one, though.
So, but one thing I would say is that the problem that causes one player to fall behind or one player to steamroll ahead in 3-player games, they're both actually just symptoms of the same underlying problem, and it really just depends on the politics at the table. One player running ahead usually happens. Imagine me and Scott and Joey Jojo Shabbat are playing a game, and Joey Jojo knows that me and Scott are both good at the game. Scott and I tend to fuck each other up to the point that Joey Jojo wins.
Well, yeah, because if you're good, you have no choice. You know, one of the other players is also good. You have no choice but to attack them. But let's say you got a 3-player game with 3 strong players, right? You're still going to be looking at the board, and since the game has an interactive political element, right, you're going to calculate at some point, whatever the game is, there'll be some action you can take, and you'll recognize, say like Carcassonne, taking points away from someone else is as good as giving points to yourself. They're equal. So there's going to be a move that you're going to see that will be negative points for someone, right? Maybe you block someone. Maybe Rim's working on a castle and I block it, right? Well, now it's me and the other person are now ahead and Rim is back. It's just natural.
So I will share how my specific strategy I've used for decades.
Pretend you're losing.
No, well, yeah, I do use psychological tricks, but let's assume I'm playing against you where that shit doesn't work. Like people where they can see right through me. In that case,
it's like, oh, I'm done. I can't win this.
Fuck whatever. This game. Look at me winning. That works so well against people who don't know me. It's kind of funny. Anyway, it used to work on all of you, but you figured me out. So say I can't pull that shit. Then my strategy is actually, in most 3-player games, I wait until some other player has taken an action that harms a player on the board who is not me. Once that happens, I double down on destroying whoever they hurt a little. Dog pile on. Remember the Omegathon? They were playing like boom blocks, and the first player attacked green, just randomly. The second player looked around, laughed, and attacked green. The third player was like, oh, well, green goes fourth. Attacking green. So green was basically out of the game. The first player comes around again. They attack blue. Blue was the second player. So blue attacked them. And the third player actually won the game as a result. So,
one more. So the thing to remember here is that all 3+ player games that aren't races have a political element and are therefore inherently different from a 2-player game. You cannot go into such a game expecting to win because you were the best. You could play the best and lose because people might vote for you to lose, and it's a vote who wins game. That is what the game is.
Thus,
if you don't like that, don't play those games.
Even better, the skill of being good at a game like that involves trying to manage the politics.
Yes, indeed.
Like, for real. Mess with your friends. But act like you're losing. Psychology. Do things in-game to protect you from politics if that is an option in the particular game you're playing.
Yep. Now, one final note, because I mentioned PUBG before, is that when N becomes large, right, nothing fundamentally changes, as Rim said before, right? The principles mathematically are the same, right? But there is a soft difference with very large numbers of players, like a PUBG, in that you're only really able to directly interact with people who are like near you, that that, it's like you can't interact with everyone in the game. You can't, right? It's
like I'm
hard.
Stuck in a firefight with like the 8 people who landed kind of near me. Meanwhile, Scott's on the other side of the island. It might be all the shitty people are on the other side of the island and I'm just boned.
Right. So even though it is fundamentally a vote who wins game, think about something like Tetris 99 on the Switch, right? Yeah, you are choosing who to attack. There is a vote who wins element there that, ultimately determines, a lot.
Oh, there's but more players dilutes the effect of politics.
Exactly. It dilutes the effect of politics until the latest stages of the game. Therefore, it ends up being not entirely a race, but more, it goes back to being a race, right? It's like, if you play Tetris 99, at the end of the game, you're going to be left with, usually, most of the time, the people who are the best at Tetris, as if you had a Tetris race, And then amongst those people, they will have some sort of competition that is a combination of Tetris skill and politics together.
The other thing that happens...
Politics are still present in the early game, but they're so weak because there's so many players, and...
You almost have to bring enough skill to the table to be able to play the politics game at the end.
Like if someone sucked at Tetris, they're just really bad at it. Even if all 98 other players voted for that person to win and didn't attack them, they would probably just die on their own.
Yep.
Right? And even if someone was amazing at Tetris and all 98 other players voted to take them out, right? You can't coordinate that kind of attack. But if you could, you still might not take them out unless some of the other 98 players were good enough, because that player is so good, they'll just be able to clear if the attack isn't strong enough.
The other thing going on with larger player counts, and this is all informal patterns, not formal patterns. They're not they're not like hard distinctions. Is that the more players there are, the more likely it is there's a broader gradient of player skill, which leads to dynamics. Like in a 3-player game, it's unlikely that I will be able to like farm the actions of the worst player to better myself in a meaningful way. But if there's 100 players, there's probably 10 bad players. I can go like in a death match with 100 players, like a Quake death match that somehow has 100 players. The skill in a death match with 100 players, like Quake 1, would be to find bad players and kill them as quickly as possible and just let good players kill you so you can get back to killing bad players. Like dynamics can be different. Local equilibria can happen.
Depends on the specific rules of the game, right? Something like PUBG, where when you kill someone, you get their stuff, right? That matters a lot. Right.
Yep.
Something like Quake, where you instantly respawn, so dying is not that big a deal, right? Chasing someone for a minute and not getting any frags would be worse than just dying.
But here's what I'd say: small player counts.
Another game where you can't really farm people so much, where there's no like benefit to attacking weak players. You would, that doesn't give you a benefit for that. Well, then that goes away.
Yep. So think of it this way: small player counts generally the interaction, like the actual specifics of the game don't matter that much. That pattern we talked about comes through almost no matter what the mechanics are in a 3-player game. But in a 10-player game versus a 20-player game, there's more nuanced or complex patterns that can emerge that rely more heavily on the specifics of those individual games. It's a lot harder to generalize about play patterns with higher player counts. And we've already gone over an hour, so there's no way we can even begin to talk about player counts in non-ortho games, which I think there is a topic there, but that's another hour.
The point is stop complaining or saying wrong things when it comes to, this game has a 1-player version, 2-player version, 3-player version.
Nope, those are 3 different games.
But those are 3 different games, and that there are inherent properties of those games that you have to accept whether you like them or not. So if you don't like them, recognize that and just don't play them instead of saying something wrong like, I don't like Root because it's politics. It's like,
don't play Root. Go play chess or Aton or something.
Just don't play that then. Or don't come ask like, how do I play Root solo? It's like, I'm sure you could take some of the rules of Root and apply and make a puzzle out of them, right? But that's not playing Root. Playing Root is a political activity.
Yep. Or
you need 3 or more people.
Or to play against AIs. But guess what? The AIs, even if it's random, they'll be randomly political.
Yeah. And also it's a puzzle. It just looks like a... Anyway.